Dear students, let's talk about My Last Duchess by Robert Browning. Robert Browning, major English poet of the Victorian age, is noted for his mastery of dramatic monologue and psychological portraiture. His most noted work was The Ring and the Book, the story of a Roman murder trial in 12 books. Browning is perhaps best known for a poem he didn't value highly, The Pied Piper of Hamelin, a children's poem that is quite different from his other work. His poems are known for their irony, characterization, dark humor, social commentary, historical settings, and challenging vocabulary and syntax. My Last Duchess is a dramatic monologue written by Victorian poet Robert Browning in 1842. In the poem, the Duke of Ferrara uses a painting of his former wife as a conversation piece. The Duke speaks about his former wife's perceived inadequacies to a representative of the family of his bride to be, revealing his obsession with controlling others in the process. Browning uses this compelling psychological portrait of a despicable character to critique the objectification of women and abuses of power. The poem reveals the greed, avarice, hypocrisy, arrogance, jealousy, malice, and obsession of Duke as contrasted with the magnanimity, gentleness, kindness, pity, sympathy, love, and adorable nature of Duchess who harbors munificence towards all. Now the poem. That's my last Duchess painted on the wall, looking as if she were alive. I call that piece a wonder now. Fra Pandolf's ends worked busily a day, and there she stands. Will please you sit and look at her? I said, Fra Pandolf by design, for never read strangers like you that pictured countenance, the depth and passion of his earnest glance. But to myself they turned, since none could spy the curtain I had drawn for you, but are, and seemed as they would ask me if they durst, how such a glance came there. So not the first are you to turn and ask thus. The speaker, the Duke of Ferrara, directs the attention of a guest to a painting of his former wife, the Duchess of Ferrara, which hangs on the wall. From the poem's opening line, Browning shows the Duke of Ferrara's obsession with possession and objectifying women. The Duke is describing a painting of his former wife rather than the woman herself, but he still describes the painting itself as my last Duchess, thereby eroding the differences between the art and the woman who inspired it. Both are essentially the same in the Duke's mind, or at least he'd prefer it as if this were so. The Duke personifies the painting throughout this passage, both by saying, There she stands, though the Duchess herself, and not her image in the painting, is standing against the wall, and will please you sit and look at her, instead of asking the messenger to look at it or the painting. This again suggests that he views the woman and the work of art as one, and, and the Duke also makes it clear that he cares for the status the painting can give him and not for the nostalgia or memories about his former wife. He remarks on the artistry of the painting. It seemed seeming so lifelike, looking as if she were alive, rather than on missing her, since she herself, as we will soon find out, has died. Likewise, he describes the artwork as a piece of his former wife's hands, or in fact of any part of a body in this section, an absence which suggests the Duke's interest in the painting's monetary rather than sentimental worth. These lines also reveal the Duke's subtle control of conversation and physical spaces. The Duke is clearly guiding the emissary through his state and art collections like a tour guide, telling what to admire, what to think about, and even when to sit. By having the emissary sitting while he stands, the Duke literally elevates himself above his guest and shows him the power hierarchy that he tries to preserve in all his interactions with others. Fra Pandolf worked hard on it. The Duke asked the guests to sit and look at the work. The Duke then explains that he deliberately mentioned the name of the painter because strangers like the emissary always looked at the Duchess' face with its deep, passionate, and earnest glance and turned to the Duke, and only the Duke, since only he pulls back the curtain that reveals the painting, and act as though they would if he dared, how an expression like that came into her face. The Duke reiterates that he isn't the first person to ask this question. "'Twas not her husband's presence only called that spot of joy into the Duchess's cheek. Perhaps Fra Pandolf chanced to say, a mental lapse, oh my lady's risked too much, or pain must never hope to reproduce the faint half flush that dies along her throat. Such stuff was courtesy, she thought, and cause enough for calling up that spot of joy. She had a heart, how shall I say, too soon made glad, too easily impressed. She liked whatever she looked on, and her looks went everywhere. Sir, 'twas all one. The Duke continues by saying that it wasn't only his presence that brought that look into the painted eyes of the Duchess or the blush of happiness into her painted cheek. He suggests that perhaps Fra Pandolf had happened to compliment her by saying her shawl draped over her too much, or paint could never recreate the faint half blush that's fading on her throat. The Duke insists that the former Duchess thought that polite comments like those were reasons enough to blush, and criticizes her in a halting way for being too easily made happy or impressed. He also claims that she liked everything and everyone she saw, although his description suggests that she was oogling everywhere who crossed her path. The Duke objects to his former Duchess everything because for her everything was the same and made her equally happy, whether it was a brooch or present for him that she wore at her chest, the sun setting in the west, a branch of cherries with some interfering person snapped off a tree in the orchard for her, or the white mule she rode in the terrace. He claims that she would say the same kind words or give the same blush in response to all of them. The Duke also objects to her manner of thanking men, although he struggles to describe his concerns. Specifically, he complains that she values his pedigree or social position as equally important to anyone else's gifts to her. My favor at her breast, the drooping of the daylight in the west, the bough of cherries some officious fool broke in the orchard for her, the white mule she rode with round the terrace, all and each would draw from her alike the moving speech, or blush at least. She thanked men, good, but thanked somehow, I know not how, as if she ranked mine gift of a 900 years old name with anybody's grip. Who stood to blame this sort of trifling? Even had you skill in speech which I have not, to make your will quite clear to such an one, and say just this or that in you disgusts me. Here you miss, or there exceed the mark, and if she let herself be lessoned so, nor plainly said her wits to yours, forsooth, and made excuse, even then would be some stooping, and I choose never to stoop. Oh, sir, she smiled, no doubt, whenever I passed her, but who passed without much the same smile? This grew. I gave commands, then all smiles stopped together. The Duke rhetorically asked whether anyone would actually lower themselves enough to argue with someone about their behavior. The Duke imagines a hypothetical situation in which he would confront the former Duchess. He says that even if we were good with words and were to clearly say, this characteristic of yours disgusts me, or here you did too little or too much, and if the former Duchess had let herself be degraded by changing instead of being stubborn and making excuses, then even then the act of confronting her would be and beneath his dignity, and he refuses to ever lower himself like that. The Duke then returns to his earlier refrain about his former wife's indiscriminate happiness, and complains to his guests that while the Duchess did smile at him whenever they passed, she smiled at everyone else the same she gave everyone else the same smile as well. The Duke explains that she began smiling at others even more, so he gave orders, and all her smiles stopped forever, presumably because he had her killed. Now she only lives on in the painting. The Duke then asks the guests to stand up and to go with him to meet the rest of the guests downstairs. He also says that the Count, revealed here as the guest master and the father of the Duke's prospective bride to be, is so known for his generosity in matters of money that no request the Duke could make for a dowry could be turned down. The Duke also adds quickly that he has always insisted since the beginning of the discussions that the Count's beautiful daughter and not the dowry is his prime objective. The Duke ends his speech by demanding that he and the Count's emissary go downstairs together, and on their way he directs the emissary's attention to a statue of the god Neptune taming a sea horse, which is a rare work of art by Claus of Ansbach, cast in bronze specially for him. There she stands, as if alive. Will please you rise? Will meet the company below. Then, I repeat, the Count, your master's known munificence, is ample warrant that no just pretence of mine for dowry will be disallowed, though this fair daughter's self, as I above at starting, is my object. Nay, we'll go together down. Sir, notice Neptune, though taming a seahorse, thought a gravity which claws of iceberg cast in bronze for me. Thank you.